friends, my name is Dasha. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about everything I read in the month of November. So November was the first month of the Clear Your Shit readathon, which is a readathon designed to make you read your own fucking books. So I will link the Twitter to that down below, as well as my vlog for the first 2 weeks right up here if you want to see a little bit of what went on. I'm really enjoying it so far. I think it's a fantastic idea, and the readathon does continue through the month of December if you do want to participate. I really enjoy it. The amount of work that went into it from the creator is like absolutely incredible, so at least do check it out. So I read 6 books, which is my average if you don't consider the fact that 2 of them were mangas, because I had a lot of school stuff and a lot of family stuff, and I was not able to read my usual big chunky boys, so a lot of these are pretty small actually. I usually go from the order from my least favorite to my favorite, so that is what I will do now, and I will also tell you what prompt they were for the Clear Your Shit readathon before I forget. So the first book I want to talk about is The Assassination Complex by Jeremy Scahill. This is a nonfiction kind of bind up of all of the drone papers, which was a leak from the government about the drone warfare program of the US. And basically the staff of The Intercept, which I guess is some kind of publication, as well as Jeremy Scahill, who's published a lot of books about like the military industrial complex of the US, basically released these papers to the public, and now there's a bind up of them with a little bit of extra material. This was for the prompt read a scary book, because I thought that the secret drone warfare program is pretty fucking scary. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It was not a new favorite. There were quite a few things that I didn't love about this, and there's some things that I did love, so I'll quickly go over the ones that I liked. First of all, there's a foreword by Edward Snowden, who I fucking love. I read his book Permanent Record in October. I'll link that here if you want to go see that. It was one of my favorite books of the year, I'll tell you that just right now. I loved Edward Snowden's work. He also was a whistleblower for the government. He exposed that the CIA and the NSA, everyone's spying on the US citizens, and he was kind of one of the best known people for that kind of expose. Anyways, he did a foreword in this, and I enjoyed reading a little bit from him. I also liked that it was kind of short. I felt as though if it was any longer, it probably would have been a little excessive, and there's a lot of mixed media, so there was some pretty interesting little graphs and, you know, statistics and stuff to visualize stuff better when they're talking about it. And it was informational, I will give it that. However, there was a few things I did not love about this. So number one, while I did like that it was short, it could have been shorter. There was a lot of wasted space in this book. Let me elaborate. Every single chapter starts with 2 pages to kind of open it up. And then on top of that, every single chapter ends with a definition of a word used in the warfare program, as well as like a little explanation and a little thing. But see how much like wasted space there is? I felt like it was completely unnecessary, especially because these definitions were being talked about throughout the book. It just was not needed, and it just kind of, again, like it wastes space. You expect to go into this and you're like, okay, like it's small enough as it is, there better be a lot of good stuff in there. But it just got kind of like, it wasn't necessary. And on top of that, some of it was a little bit repetitive. Like I said, the definitions were mentioned in earlier chapters. I don't need to have a full page spread explaining them again. I'm not that stupid. Another thing that really bugged me was when the drone papers were released, part of the supporting material that was like leaked from the government was, I guess, a PowerPoint presentation, like some slides. And on one hand, it was nice because the slides are included in the book. However, first of all, they take up like half a page, and there's a ton of them, and they're really not necessary half the time because, point B, they're not explained. They're just kind of shoved in there with the topic that they go with. But I would have liked to see, for, you know, for further educational purposes, to have maybe a little, you know, this represents this is what this does, this shows the coordinators this shows officials this. Like, that would have been so much more useful than just shoving them there. And then on top of those little stupid slides, on one chapter, they had photos of London because the target they were talking about was from London. And I'm like, this is not necessary. I know what London looks like, girl. You don't need to put pictures in my book for that and just waste some space. I don't know, it felt like it could have been a lot more concise. It felt like it could have been cut down quite a bit, and I just was not the biggest fan of how much kind of wasted space there was. But it was informational. However, I will also say that if you are interested at all in the drone warfare program and to know more about it, just look up the drone papers online. There's literally no need for a nice pretty bind up of them. Sure, it was interesting to read about, but I feel like I could have got a lot of this from the internet, to be quite honest with you. So 3 out of 5 stars, not a favorite, but still somewhat interesting, and I would recommend reading from the drone papers if you do want to know a little bit more on the topic. The next book I want to talk about is Othello by Shakespeare. So this is a classic tragedy about the Moor of Othello and a story of betrayal and heartbreak and jealousy and all that fun stuff. So this was for the prompt read your shortest book. Obviously it's a fucking play, they're not really long. I didn't expect to be reading Othello this month, but hey, here we are. Shakespeare was on the roster. So this was a 4 to 5 stars for me. I did not enjoy it as much as I enjoy some of my favorite Shakespeare plays. Merchant of Venice is one of my personal favorites, Macbeth, you know, that fun stuff. But this was quite interesting. I definitely did not expect to enjoy the story as much as I did, but I was also watching a production of it on YouTube along with reading it, and that definitely helped. Also, I was surprised more at myself at how easily I understood what was going on. I expected, like, out of school for a little while to not know how to interpret Shakespeare, but I guess my brain still works. And there was like some typical super quotable Shakespeare moments. Even like hundreds of years later, he still truly is a masterclass in writing. He just gets people so well, and it's so fucking interesting to see how humans really haven't changed. And it's always fun I love comparing how society and how people are down the line. Like, it's so much fun to read a book even in like the 70s but further back and see how people today are still the same. It's always fun to me, and that definitely was present in this book. So this play, and I really enjoyed it. So I would recommend, I'm sure you've all heard this before, but truly, like, reading Shakespeare is better when you watch Shakespeare at the same time, at least. So yeah, I enjoyed this. The next book I want to talk about is Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. So this is a fantasy novella about Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, and it's about these kids who go through portals to get to these fantasy worlds, but then when they come back to real world, they're a little fucked up. They don't know where they're going, they don't know what they're doing. Some of them want to go back, some of them do. Some of them can't find the portal again, so some of them get sent to Eleanor West's home. And you're following this one girl who's like a recent arrival, and she kind of discovers the school and she meets all these people, and this was so cute. Listen, I did not expect to like this as much as I did. I saw everyone talking about it all the time, but I didn't really know if I would enjoy it because of how short it is, but I truly started to care about the characters. I love the characters. I could follow them anywhere. I truly loved every single one of them. I thought they were so unique, and the school setting was kind of interesting too. The plot was not the best, but I guess when you're given like 180 pages, A, you can guess what's gonna happen some of the time, and B, you're gonna have to speed up the action. So even though like some of it did go pretty fast, I didn't really expect much else from such a short book. But regardless of that, like I said, the characters, sweet little honey buns, I fucking love them, and I'm really excited to see more of the worlds, I guess, because I know that some of the other novellas follow people inside of their portal worlds, and while you did get a lot of talk about them, you're still in the real world here. So I'm curious to see more of these worlds that Shauna Maguire had invented. Her writing is also like beautiful. She has this really beautiful prose that just evokes such imagery in your mind that's really pleasant to read, honestly. And it was a much more fun experience than I expected, and the amount of development that she was able to do for such a short book was impeccable. So I really enjoyed this, and I believe I used this for the prompt to read a fantasy just because it was kind of shorter, but I'm not 100% sure. Alright, so the next 2 books I want to talk about are both mangas, and I love them both, so it doesn't really matter what order. So the first one is Death Note, the Black Edition Volume 2, so this contains volumes 3 and 4. I will link the wrap-up where I talked about the first edition first volume right up here. This is basically the story of Light, who is this super gifted, talented kid, but he's getting very bored with his life because he's too fucking smart. And he discovers the Death Note, which is a death god's notebook where they get to write down names of people, and once they're in the book, they die. Chaos ensues. So if you watched my last month's wrap up, I gave the first volume a 5 out of 5 stars, and I was floored. This one was not quite as good. This was a 4-star for me. I just felt as though there were some characters that were introduced that I didn't quite enjoy, and the story dragged a little bit more. Some things that were happening weren't quite as exciting as the first volume. There was just a bit less of that anticipation, like edge of your seat stuff. However, I do really like where the story is going, and I'm excited to keep reading. I just felt as though it just wasn't quite at the same level as the first 2 volumes and how the story progressed in those. But there are also some characters that were introduced that were both good and some bad. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of their dynamics play out. For example, there's a new death god that's introduced in here, so it's really interesting to see the dynamics between Light's god and this new god. And adversely, there's a new character that's introduced that I cannot fucking stand. Every time that they're on the page, I lose it. I'm like, you're so fucking annoying. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the series. I can't wait to keep reading them, and I definitely do want to watch the anime once I'm done with these. Along a similar line, I really want to watch the fucking anime, dude. The Full Metal Alchemist. This is the volume 1 of the beautiful Full Metal edition. They have this unbelievable insert that just, oh, I love that. And this is the story of Edward and Alphonse, and they are both alchemists, and when they are about 12 years old, they attempt a very complicated and forbidden alchemical spell where they try to bring their mother back to life, but fucking around with human bodies is not allowed. So Edward loses an arm and a leg, and Alphonse ends up basically dying until Edward fuses his soul to a suit of armor. And this series chronicles their trips trying to find the Philosopher's Stone, which will help them restore their bodies back to normal, in theory. And this was a delight. This was so much fun. Edward is, he's like short, so anytime someone mentions that he's short and they're surprised, because he's actually one of the, you know, the royal alchemist. He's the alchemist, and everyone gets surprised that he's so short when they see him, and he flies into like a fit of rage anytime anyone mentions how short he is, and it's just so fucking funny to watch. And I felt as though the art style in this is not as detailed perhaps as even Death Note, or especially Monstrous, which I know is a graphic novel. It's not quite the same, and this is supposed to be targeted, I think it's called a shonen manga, where it's targeted more towards like teenage boys, and it's not supposed to be beautiful or like a heartwarming story. It's supposed to be like action and fun. But I wish that like the background was a bit more detailed, because I'm really enjoying the world. There's some elements that were introduced kind of at the end that I'm really interested. There were some parts that were sad. There were some parts that made me laugh out loud. It's just such a cool world that was created that I really did not expect, and I can't wait to keep reading the series. And I believe I read this for the prompt to read a magical book, because I'm not very creative. And the last book I want to talk about was for the prompt, read a book with a found family or group, and of course I had to pick up The Lies of Lamora by Scott Lynch. And if you saw my vlog, you saw me losing my mind over the characters in this. Oh my god, I loved everyone. The group that's in here, I just love them all. This is like a Venice in the Renaissance era inspired city where these band of thieves called the Gentlemen Bastards operate, and they just live their life being thieves. It's like not even morally gray. They're just not really good people. They like to steal. And it's fun, and I ended up liking this so much. So the beginning has this like dual timeline where you see Locke when he was just brought to the Gentlemen Bastards for the first time, and then you see him during the current day where he's operating with the Gentlemen Bastards and running these big games and scheming. And it was really fun to see how those timelines ended up weaving together. I initially thought that where the plot was going was gonna be shit. I was not sure I was gonna enjoy this. There were some decisions that were made by the author that did not make me happy. But in the end, it all made so much sense. And even though there's some parts that I'm still like, I wish that hadn't happened, I really did enjoy how the story wrapped up. You saw all the threads kind of come together and everything made sense. and I'm really excited to follow our boys into their next adventures. I cannot wait to see what happens to them. This ended up being a 5 out of 5 stars for me, and I truly did not expect to like it as much as I did. So that's it for the books I finished. I quickly want to mention the ones that I'd started because I did get some ways into them in November. So the first one is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I'm about 130 pages in. This is a literary fiction about a group of friends living in New York City. Very character heavy. The beginning has just all been kind of character exposition so far. So I don't want to say more than that because there's not much more than that happening. This was for I think this was just like free pick. I could pick whatever I wanted within the readathon. So I went with this because none of the other prompts really fit for this. And I'm definitely gonna keep reading it in December. I wouldn't say I'm like enjoying it because it is a lot of like exposition so far, but it's definitely really well written, and it's gonna be interesting to see how I feel about this at the end. And finally, for the prompt to read a book with an animal in it, I have A Feast for Crows by George R. R. Martin. If you've been on my channel at all, you know that I'm currently reading through the entire A Song of Ice and Fire series this year. Hopefully I'll get to Dance with Dragons in December, but I'm not sure. As of right now, I'm halfway through A Feast for Crows, and I am still absolutely fucking loving it. Are we shocked? Are we surprised? Not at all. This is definitely one of my favorite, if not my favorite, like high fantasy series that I've read so far, and I'm just gonna keep on keeping on with it. And hopefully by the time I'm done Dance with Dragons, George R. R. Martin will get his shit together and announce The Winds of Winter. Probably not, but a girl can dream. So that was it for what I read in November. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you've read any of these, please let me know, or let me know what you guys read in November. My social media will be linked down below as usual. And other than that, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.